my dears. Thank you all so much for joining me today. So, we will now be continuing our readings of the Tir na Nog section of Irish fairy and folk tales. Our first story for today is called Fior Oscura, attributed to T. Crofton Crocker. A little way beyond the gallows green of Cork, and just outside of town, there is a great lough of water, where people in the winter go and skate for the sake of diversion. But the very sport above the water is nothing to what is under it. For at the very bottom of this lough there are buildings and gardens, far more beautiful than any now to be seen. And how they came there was in this manner. Long before Saxon foot pressed Irish soil, there was a great king called Cork, whose palace stood where the lough now is, in a round green valley that was just about a mile. In the middle of the courtyard was a spring of fair water, so pure, so clear, that it was a wonder of all the world. Much did the king rejoice at having so great a curiosity within his palace. But as people came in crowds from far and near to draw the precious water of this spring, he was sorely afraid that in time it might become dry. So he caused a high wall to be built up round it, and would allow nobody to have the water, which was a very great loss to the poor people living about the palace. Whenever he wanted any for himself, he would send his daughter to go get it, not liking to trust his servants with the key of the well door, fearing they may give some away. One night, the king gave a grand entertainment, and there were many great princes present, and lords and nobles without end. And there were wonderful doings throughout the palace. There were bonfires whose blaze reached up to the sky, and dancing was there, and to such sweet music that it ought to have waked up the very dead right out of their graves. And feasting was there in the greatest of plenty for all who came, nor was there one turned away from the palace gates. But you're welcome heartily, was the poor salute for all. Now it happened that at this grand entertainment there was one young prince above all the rest, mighty comely to behold, and as tall and as straight as ever eye would wish to look upon. Right merrily did he dance that night with the old king's daughter, wheeling here and wheeling there, as light as a feather, and footing it away to the admiration of everyone else. The musicians played the better for seeing their dancing, and they danced as if their lives depended on it. After all this dancing came the supper, and the young prince was seated at a table by the side of his beautiful partner, who smiled upon him as often as he spoke to her. And that was by no means so often as he wished, for he had constantly to turn to the company and thank them for the many compliments passed upon his fair partner and himself. In the midst of this banquet, one of the great lords said to King Cork, "May it please your majesty, here is everything in abundance that the heart can wish for, both to eat and drink, except water." "Water," said the king, mightily pleased at someone calling for that which purposefully there was a want. "Water you shall have, my lord, speedily, and that of such a delicious kind that I challenge all the world to equal it." "Daughter," said he, "go fetch some in the golden vessel which I caused to be made for this purpose." The king's daughter, who is called FaeWorks, which signifies in English spring water, did not much like to be told to perform so menial a service before so many people, and though she did not venture to refuse the commands of her father, yet hesitated to obey him, and looked down upon the ground. The king, who loved his daughter very much, seeing this, was sorry for what he had desired her to do, but having said the word, he was never known to recall it. He therefore thought of a way to make his daughter go speedily and fetch the water, and it was by proposing that the young prince, her partner, should go along with her. Accordingly, with a loud voice, he said, "Daughter, I wonder not at your fearing to go alone so late at night, but I doubt not the young prince at your side will go with you." The prince was not displeased upon hearing this, and taking the golden vessel in one hand, and with the other led the king's daughter out of the hall, while all present gazed after them with delight. When they came to the spring of water in the courtyard of the palace, the fair Uska unlocked the door with greatest care, and stooping down with the golden vessel to take some of the water out of the well, found the vessel so heavy that she lost her balance and fell right in. The young prince tried in vain to save her, for the water rose and rose so fast that the entire courtyard was speedily covered with it, and he hastened back almost in a state of distraction to the king. The door of the well being left open, The water, which had been so long confined, rejoiced at obtaining its liberty, rushed forth incessantly, every moment rising higher and higher, and was in the hall of the entertainment as soon as the young prince himself, and so that when he attempted to speak to the king, he was up in his neck to water. At length the water rose to such a height that it filled the entire of the green valley in which the king's palace stood, and so the present law of Cork was formed. Yet the king and his guests were not drowned, as would now happen if such an awful indubitation took place. Neither was his daughter, the fair Uska, who returned to the banquet hall at the very next night after this dreadful event. And every night since the same entertainment and dancing goes on in the palace at the bottom of the loch, and will last until someone has the luck to bring up out of it the golden vessel, which was the cause of all this mischief. Nobody can doubt that it was a judgment upon the king for shutting up the well in the courtyard from the poor people. And if there are any who do not credit my story, they may go and see the Loch of Cork, for there it is to be seen to this day. The road of Kinsale passes at one side by it, and when its waters are low and clear, the tops of towers and stately buildings may be plainly viewed in the bottom by those who have good eyesight, without the help of spectacles. Our next story for today is actually a collection of little paragraphs for a story called Hy Brasail, the Island of the Blessed, attributed to Gerald Griffin. On the ocean that hollows the rocks where ye dwell, a shadowy land has appeared, as they tell. Men thought it a region of sunshine and rest, and they called it Hy Brasail, the Isle of the Blessed. From year upon year on the ocean's blue rim, the beautiful spectre showed lovely and dim. The golden clouds curled the deep where it lay, and it looked like an Eden, away, far away. A peasant who heard of the wonderful tale in the breeze of the Orient loosened his sail. From Ara the holy he turned to the west, for thought Ara was holy, Hy Brasail was blessed. He heard not the voices that called from the shore, he heard not the rising wind's menacing roar. Home, kindred, and safety he left on that day, and he sped to Hy Brasail, away, far away. Morn rose on the deep and the shadowy isle, o'er the faint rim of distance reflected its smile. Noon burned on the wave, and that shadowy shore seemed levelly distant and as faint as before. Lone evening came down on the wanderer's track, and to Ara again he looked timidly back. Oh, far on the verge of the ocean it lay, yet the Isle of the Blessed was far, far away. Rash dreamer, return, O ye winds of the main, bear him back to his own peaceful Ara again. Rash fool, for a vision of fanciful bliss, to barter thy calm life of labor and peace. The warning of reason was spoken in vain. He never revisited Ara again. Late night fell on the deep amidst tempest and spray, and he died on the waters, away, far away. Hello, Radiant Ayumi. Thank you for coming in. Now that I read this story, I think I might have read it last time on accident. Now I'm double checking to make sure. Okay. Our next story for today is called The Enchanted Lake, attributed to T. Crofton Crocker. In the west of Ireland there was a lake, and no doubt it is still there, in which many young men were at various times drowned. What makes this circumstance remarkable was that the bodies of the drowned persons were never found. People naturally wondered about this, and at length the lake came to have a bad repute. Many dreadful stories were told about the lake. Some would affirm that on a dark night its waters appeared like fire. Others would speak of horrid forms which were seen to glide over it, and everyone agreed that a strange sulphurous smell issued from out of it. There lived, not far distant from this lake, a young farmer named Roderick Keating, who was about to be married to one of the prettiest girls in that part of the country. On his return to Limerick, from Limerick, where he had been to purchase the wedding ring, he came up with 2 or 3 of his acquaintance who were standing on the bank, and they began to joke with him about Peggy Honan. One said that young Delaney, his rival, had in his absence contrived to win the affections of his mistress, but Roderick's confidence in his intended bride was too great to be disturbed at such a tale, and putting his hand in his pocket, He produced and held up with significant look the wedding ring. As he was turning it between his forefinger and thumb in a token of triumph, somehow or other the ring fell from his hand and rolled right into the lake. Roderick looked after it with the greatest sorrow. It was not so much for its value, though it had cost him half a guinea, as for the ill luck of the thing. And the water was so deep that there was little chance of recovering it. His companions laughed at him, and he in vain endeavored to tempt any of them by the offer of a handsome reward to dive right after the ring. They were all a little inclined to venture as Roderick Keating himself, for the tales of which they heard when children were strongly impressed on their memories, and a superstitious dread filled the minds of each of them. "Must I then go back to Limerick to buy another ring?" exclaimed the young farmer. "Will not 10 times what the ring cost tempt any one of you to venture after it?" "Thank you, Tap, for the follow." There was within hearing a man who was considered to be a poor, crazy, half-witted fellow, but he was as harmless as a child, and used to go wandering up and down throughout the country from one place to another. When he heard of so great a reward, Padine, for that was his name, spoke out and said that if Roderick Keating would give him encouragement equal to what he had offered to others, he was ready to venture after the ring into the lake. And Padine, all while he spoke, looked as covetous after the sport as the money. "I'll take you at your word," said Keating. So Padine pulled off his coat, and without a single syllable more, down he plunged, head foremost, into the lake. What depth he went to, no one can tell exactly, but he was going, going down through the water, until the water parted from him, and he came upon dry land. The sky and the light and everything was there just as if it were here, and he saw fine pleasure grounds with an elegant avenue through them, and a grand house with a power of steps going up to the door. When he had recovered from his wonder at finding the land so dry and comfortable under the water, he looked about him, and what should he see but all the young men that were drowned, working away at the pleasure grounds, as if nothing had ever happened to them. Some of them were mowing down the grass, and more were settling out the gravel walks, and doing all manner of nice work, as neat and as clever as if they had never drowned. And they were singing away with high glee. She is as fair as Capaquin. Have you courage her to win? And her wealth it far outshines Cullen's bog and silver mines. She exceeds all heart can wish, not bawling like the fogrish, but as the brightly flowering lea, graceful, mild, and pure is she. Well, Padine could not but look at the young men, for he knew some of them before they got lost to the lake. But he said nothing, for he thought a great deal more than that, like an oyster. No, not the wind of a word passed his lips. So on he went towards the big house, bold enough, as if he had seen nothing to speak of, yet all the time mightily wishing to know who the young woman could be that the young men were singing the song about. When he had nearly reached the door of the great house, out walks from the kitchen a powerful, fat woman, moving along like a beer barrel on two legs, with teeth as big as a horse's teeth, and up she made towards him. "Good morrow, Padine," said she. "Good morrow, madam," says he. "What brought you here?" says she. "'Tis after Rory Keating's golden ring," said he, "I come." "Here it is for you," said Padine's fat friend, with a smile on her face that moved like boiling gruel. "Thank you, madam," replied Padine, taking it from her. "I need not say the Lord increase you, for you're fat enough already. Will you tell me, if you please, am I to go back the same way I came?" "Then you did not come to marry me?" cried the corpulent woman in a desperate fury. "Not till I come back again, my darling," said Padine. "I'm to be paid for my message, and I must return with the answer, or else they'll wonder what has become of me." "Never mind the money," said the fat woman. "If you marry me, you shall live forever and a day in that house, and want for nothing." Padine saw clearly that, having got possession of the ring, the fat woman had no power to detain him. So, without minding anything she said, he kept moving and moving down the avenue, quite quietly, and looking about him, for, to tell the truth, he had no particular inclination to marry the fat fairy. When he came to the gate, without ever saying goodbye, out he bolted, and he found the water coming all about him again. Up he plunged through it, and wonder enough there was when Padine was seen swimming away at the opposite side of the lake. But he soon made the shore, and told Roderick Keating and all the other boys that were standing there looking out for him all that had happened. Roderick paid him 5 guineas for the ring on the spot, and Padim thought himself so rich with such a sum of money in his pocket that he did not go back to marry the fat lady with the fine house at the bottom of the lake, knowing she had plenty of young men to choose a husband from, if she pleased to be married. Our next story for today is called The Phantom Isle, attributed to Giraldus Cambrenus. Among the other isles is one newly formed, which they call the Phantom Isle, which had its origins in this manner. One calm day a large mass of earth rose to the surface of the sea, where no land had ever been seen before, to the great amazement of islanders who observed it. Some of them said that it was a whale or other immense sea monster. Others, remarking that it continued motionless, said, "No, it is an island." In order, therefore, to reduce their doubts to certainty, some picked young men of the island, determined to approach nearer the spot in a boat. When, however, they came so near to it that they thought they should go to shore, the island sank in the water and entirely vanished from sight. The next day it reappeared, and again mocked the same youths with the like delusion. At length, on their rowing towards it on the third day, they followed the advice of an older man, and let fly an arrow, barbed with red-hot steel, against the island, and then landing, found it stationary and habitable. This adds one to the many proofs that fire is the greatest of enemies to every sort of phantom, and so much that those who have seen apparitions fall into a swoon as soon as they are sensible of the brightest of fire. For fire, both from its position and nature, is the noblest of elements, being a witness of the secret of the heavens. The sky is fiery, the planets are fiery, the bush burnt with fire, but was not consumed. The Holy Ghost sat upon the apostles in tongues of fire. And here I thought it was the fact that they use steel. One would generally consider that to be quite a horror. Our next story for today is called Cormac and Mary, attributed to T. Crofton Crocker. She is not dead, she has no grave, but lives beneath Loch Corrib's water, and in the murmur of each wave, methinks I catch the songs I taught her. Thus many an evening by its shore sat Cormac raving, wild and lowly, still idly muttering o'er and over, "She lives, detained by spells unholy. Death claims her not, too fair for earth. Her spirit lives, alien of heaven, nor will it know a second birth. When sinful mortals are forgiven, cold as this rock, the wind comes chill, and mists the gloomy waters cover. But oh, her soul is colder still. To lose her God, to leave her lover. The lake was in profound repose, yet one white wave came gently curling, and as it reached the shore arose dim figures, banners gay unfurling. Onward they move, an airy crowd. Through each thin form of moonlight ray shone, while spear and helm and pageant proud appear in liquid undulation. Bright barbed steeds, curveting tread their trackless way with antic capers, and curtains cloud hang overhead, festooned by rainbow-colored vapors. And when a breath of air would stir the drapery of heaven's own wreathing, light wings of prismy gossamer just moved and sparkled to the breathing. Nor wanting with the choral song, swelled in silvery chimes of sweetness, to sound of which this subtle throng advanced in playful grace and fleetness. With music's strain all came and went upon poor Cormac's doubting vision, now rising in wild merriment, now softly fading in derision. Christ, save her soul, he boldly cried, and when the blessed name was spoken, fierce yells and fiendish shrieks replied, and vanished all, the spell was broken. And now on Corb's lonely shore, freed by his word from the power of fairy, to life, to love, restored once more, young Cormac welcomes back his Mary. I find myself a little surprised, for we have already gone through all the stories regarding Tir na Nog. And so I believe, since this next story and section is a little bit lengthy, I suppose we will cut it into there to make a nice and neat chapter. Next time we will continue on with the new sector called Priests and Saints. But until then, my dears, I do thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope the rest of your days are truly wonderful. And until we next meet, my dears, ta-ta, and fare thee well. thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like what you saw here, I ask that you leave a like, comment, subscribe, and until we next meet, my dears, I do hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And until then, ta-ta and farewell.